Hello, viewers. Welcome to this contemporary and relevant panel discussion on building a compelling multi experience app strategy. Joining me in this session are enterprise technology experts from varied verticals. On my left is Mr. Amit Dubey, Deputy CTO Tech Mahindra. On my right is Mr. Vibhor Sharma, CTO InfoEdge, and Mr. Ashish Ipili, Staff Solutions Consultant, Professional Services for Google Cloud. Thank you, gentlemen, for taking time off and joining in this discussion. Let me start with you, Amit. A lot of organizations are going on digital transformation journeys. What are the different trends that you see in app modernization, and what strategies are you adopting to modernize apps in your organization?
So I think there's a generic trend of getting each and everything on mobile app first. So from web to mobile transition itself is a very complex process for us. You might have observed that many such offerings were closed on web portals and now solely dependent on mobile. And mobile has its own challenge because of the form factor and the experience that we are offering to end user. So from product features perspective to the experience perspective, we need to redesign it everything. And then there is a continuous need of new kind of features and strategies that we are incorporating in that solution. And that should go seamlessly. It should not change too much about that existing UI, because the end user should not see any change in that. And then they should be able to enjoy new services, new features. Otherwise, for them, it is a different app. So their loyalty is always attached to that particular viewing experience. And if you are changing that, their loyalty will also get changed. So that is a major challenge that we foresee, especially when there are hundreds of applications offered by someone and there are organizations, and then they are integrating them all together, and it is a big challenge for them. And then when you are trying to do something like this, there are security challenges. So that is a next level complexity that we have. How we are going to cater that, like as I was discussing with someone recently, even multi-factor authentication is not a safe solution. So we are offering something which is very, very sensitive, and which has some PI data, which has some e-commerce connections. And then if we are not able to ensure that security for the end user, it may not have any significance to them. So these are the few quick challenges that I can foresee, especially when this transition is taking place.
Sure. Coming to you, Vibhor, like Amit just mentioned, customer experience and security are prerequisites for having a modernized app development strategy. What are your thoughts on this?
I think absolutely. What is happening is in the last decade or so, the technology paradigms have been changing very, very rapidly. The biggest challenge for most enterprises is to be able to keep up with these changes, to offer their users a superior experience which the users are expecting on a regular basis. The biggest challenge, therefore, is decomposing these legacy applications that exist in most enterprises in a monolith format. Right? How to break them down, build them in context for the users, and modernize them. And of course, security. Because security, the whole paradigm has changed completely. Users access applications and platforms in many different ways now. Different abstractions are now offered for enterprise applications. So you need to figure out security from the word go get, not at a later stage in the life cycle of an application. That's what I see.
So, Ashish, I'm sure you must be interacting with lots of enterprises. What kind of trends are you seeing in application modernization?
So, in addition to what Amit and Vibhor have been saying, right, some of the reasons why customers are actually on the path of app modernization is getting features quickly, decoupling, and then making monolithic architecture into microservices to drive cost and performance optimization. And some customers actually want the scalability to manage their peak loads, with changing user trends and behaviors. Some also wants, drive, in terms of resiliency and high availability as well. Having said that, if these are the requirements, the way they're trying to achieve this, the trends that we are seeing in the market is a lot of customers are actually breaking out their monolithic legacy applications into smaller microservices. And I think there are challenges in getting there, but we're seeing a lot of customers doing that, and thereby they're driving these efficiencies of pushing codes faster. Like if they're more built into smaller code samples, then it is easier to push code easily. Then we're also seeing a lot of our customers are actually leveraging some managed services, right? Rather than them developing from the scratch, they break it down and then use managed services like, for example, the cloud functions that we offer, or Google App Engine, where they just bring in the code and then we take care of the rest of the infrastructure and underlying infrastructure as such. But a lot of customers are also looking at portability. So a lot of cloud providers actually provide the serverless kind of an architecture, but some customers are worried about the portability part of it. So customers like these actually lean towards more in terms of a Docker or a container kind of an technology, which helps them port their applications from one platform to the other platform. Well, these are some of the trends we're looking at the moment, and all of these actually drive efficiencies from a DevOps point of view as well. Giving them access to image or container registry, so easier to push those codes very quickly and get the features to customers really quickly.
Sure, sure. So Vibhor, as Ashish just said, application modernization is right at the top of the priority list for most enterprises. But it's easier said than done. What kind of challenges do you face in this journey?
Well, there are a tremendous lot of challenges. One is definitely understanding where to start it, because the moment you say what you want to modernize your legacy application, it seems like a big task, which should not be picked up at all. But I think that the key decision therefore is to figure out how to start chipping away at it, rather than saying we will completely overhaul everything. So one is that whatever your development pipeline or innovation pipeline is, in parallel you sort of start chipping away and refactoring your existing application. Try and figure out points of decoupling where you can sort of disintegrate it at different levels of abstraction, to be able to sort of offer more interoperability yet flexibility in different pieces. Then I think the important aspect is skills. A lot of the workforce is not really abreast with the new age sort of technology stacks. If they are aware of the stacks, they are not expertise. They don't have the expertise. So I think that has to be done in parallel, and therefore it is crucial to pick it either piecemeal or get in a third party who is much more conversant with the new stacks and help you in that journey. And the third piece is continuing on the path of innovation, because it's a trade-off. Do you sort of re-architect for the future, or do you adopt the future? So I think these go hand in hand, and you have to figure out how to balance these two off.
Moving on to you, Amit, do you echo his sentiments that this is something that organizations should not take up? It's so tough. And what challenges do you encounter?
So I completely agree with Vibhor. I think beyond that, we are also going to face some new kind of challenges, especially in India when this new data protection will be presented and tabled. We need to take care of all these aspects from compliance perspective as well, because right now there is these systems are relaxed, and we are not so concerned whether what we are taking as an input from our applications, whether we are taking care of all this secure at rest and transition level, whether there is a possibility of data leak at the client side, whether the solution must be a cloud application or on-prem solution. So all these decisions were mostly taken based on the cost. But now there are other aspects as well, not only the cost. So these are some new challenges that we need to foresee, whether we will be complying all these things all together, even if the solution is going with the existing way, or we need to change it altogether. So whether we can keep the data, that sort of data out of India or not, or we need to bring it back. So that will add lots of new challenges, not only from technical perspective, but also from process perspective, because right now these things were designed not considering these new challenges. I'm sure the companies will have some tough time migrating all these things in short duration, because if this bill will be table, we may not have enough time for this transition. They'll give some time, but not like years or something. It's hardly 6 months, 7 months of time. So I foresee this as a quick challenge that we need to encounter in short term.
So Ashish, you spoke about the trends in enterprises. Can you throw more light on the challenges that CIOs share with you?
Sure. Absolutely. I think, first thing is I want to acknowledge both the points Amit and Vibhor have mentioned, right? Skills gap is really, really important, especially when there is explosion of services that are offered by multiple parties. So even if people are intending to learn, there are too many services to learn, and it's not uniform across the board. So skills gaps definitely, and absolutely the path to, although almost every customer actually acknowledges and appreciates the fact that there are a cool set of technologies on the cloud side of things, but the journey itself is not very easy. So I mean, for example, making a monolith application or a Java-based or a COBOL-based application and containerizing them and moving to a GKE or a Kubernetes kind of clusters, it's not that simple and easy. We've seen customers struggling to go through the journey as such, and there could be various compliance and regulatory aspects as well, where they cannot actually move to a cloud vendor where these technologies are available, and they would have to achieve most of this on the on-prem itself. And also, if you look at customers, for example, the banking customers in EMEA, what we have seen is or heard from them is that they have to prove that they can run the workloads in two different cloud vendors. So then the developer who's developing the applications will have to, hey, I have to develop one version of code for this platform, one version for this platform, and one for the on-prem. And then if it's a retail chain, if they're deploying in a store or a warehouse, then it's a different hardware there. So the developer ends up making multiple versions of the same applications running multiple locations, right? So that adds to the complexity. So these are a few more challenges in terms of in the journey as such.
So we were talking about security. How do you ensure security of your apps? Because as experts believe, security has to be built in rather than bolted on. How do you ensure security of apps?
Firstly, start off by being very paranoid, because if you presume that your apps are secure, they're definitely not. Right. Secondly, I think bake security right from the day one when you conceptualize your product, feature, or platform, and make it part of the development life cycle. There are several integration points where things go weak, whether it is third-party integration or inter-app integration. A lot of things are happening across the API layers right now, and that's where a lot of the black magic happens as well. So I think educating the development team to think security, to think user data, and it's important, is step one. Educating them on the paradigms of writing secure applications, is second most important. Building in, and that's what we do, more frequently, is that building in hooks in your Git repositories, which sort of scan the code on its own, and throw back the release to the developer in case it's not meeting a certain level of security. That sort of motivates developers to sort of think security even harder, and getting in experts from the outside to sort of do vulnerability assessments and penetration testing on a frequent basis is also very important. Yeah.
Amit, what's your security strategy with respect to apps?
So I think it's a continuous process. So it starts, as he said rightly, like it starts from design, security by design, and then you need to do some check and balances at every step. Of course, with proper risk assessment, like you can't make it too secure and then overloading it with lots of new complexities. But then even if with all these kind of efforts, and eventually when these are rolled out and customer is experiencing it, we find some different new types of attack vectors. Those are challenging that application. So even after the commercialization of this app or solution, we need to take care of it through regular scanning and ensuring like there is no such silent vulnerability that can be exploited later on. There are red teaming efforts, those are taken as an input to challenge it from hackers' perspective. And also at different level, because it's not only app, there's a database, there are data centers, there are networks, and then these apps. And then there are third-party plugins, because you might be secure. But then are we ensuring like all these third-party solutions those are integrated with our app are also secure? So you need to do some due diligence to those APIs as well and their databases as well. So recently I got a case when we found some vulnerability in a system, but it was not in the core application. It was due to some third-party plugin. Those were taken as a supportive feature to that solution. And they never thought like this could actually create an entry point to their systems eventually, because they are authorizing them, so they are actually authorizing us as well. So that authentication mechanism was a key for us, and we were able to penetrate to their databases. So all these kind of challenges are new, and these will be keep coming. This is a continuous process. We can never say like we are secure and now no more effort is required. So first of all, as you said, like we need to change our mindset, that and the mindset should go from developer to the top management level. Then only we can put the right level of efforts.
So Ashish, coming back to the topic of cloud definitely has advantages. But not all companies or workloads can migrate to the cloud due to regulatory or compliance issues. How do you help such enterprises, such CIOs modernize applications?
Sure, absolutely. So, one of the most popular services that we offer is GKE, Google Kubernetes Engine, and a lot of our customers actually love it. It was introduced in back in 2014, and then one of the most mature services to run your Kubernetes clusters. And we have had a lot of customers asking us, hey, can we do the same thing on-prem? So earlier this year, we have introduced a service, a revolutionary service, if I may say, called Anthos. So what Anthos helps you do is run it's a hybrid platform built on open source technologies like Kubernetes, Istio, Knatives, and it wrapped up together, and it's offered as a solution to our customers. So essentially, what happens is that customers can actually orchestrate and run their Kubernetes on-prem, and in a consistent way in terms of they can run the same code, same clusters on-prem or on Google Cloud or any other cloud vendors out there, and have a single pane of glass monitoring everything together, pushing their security, to the part of security, right? Pushing those policies across equally, patching all the clusters equally. So one pane of glass managing everything together. So from a developer point of view, is actually developing the applications for them. It's just write the code at just once, and then you deploy it multiple places, and the management layer kind of abstracts everything for the end, for the developers, and then we manage at a very top level. So that brings the advantages of cloud to great extent to customers as well. And one of the challenges we talked about is how do you containerize VM-based applications, old legacy applications. As part of Anthos offering, we brought something called as Anthos Migrate to the market. What it essentially does is takes your VM-based application, containerizes it, and then you can just move that as a Docker to any of the platforms, underlying platforms that you want, and you can run it. And then you can achieve some of the facilities or some of the benefits that Kubernetes brings to you in terms of achieving that density, and also getting there quickly, and then then chipping away, as we both said, chipping away slowly, and then breaking into microservices slowly.
So one final question, starting with you, Vibhor. What best practices would you like to adopt, or you have already adopted in your enterprise to create a healthy app development ecosystem?
The foremost thing is that keep the user first in your mind. Because if you build applications thinking legacy, thinking what people you have, what skills you have, then you're going to lag behind. But if you look at the changing paradigms, you look at the users and what they're using and how they're using and how the context is changing rapidly, that is the first and foremost thing, right? Because that will determine the path for modernization, not the fact that, hey, we have legacy. Even if you have legacy applications, but you're solving the user's needs beautifully, you can take your time to sort of modernize. I mean, I would say that. Second thing is that you gotta figure out which pieces to break down first from a standpoint of agility and modernization, because taking a whole blueprint of changing and revamping the entire platforms, in my view, is a bad idea, because that takes a lot of energy, time, and costs. So I think you got to pick the most crucial pieces that need to be nimble to adopt to changes, to help, like I said, deliver superior user experiences first and foremost. And third and more importantly, I mean, you got to always, like we've discussed, look at user data and security with a lot of importance and significance. Yeah.
Amit, what's your take on the best practices?
So normally we follow a checklist and just to ensure that there are not enough risk left and we can manage it timely. I'll just quickly point out a few of these. So whenever we are at the design level, especially, we need to ensure, like from the risk perspective, whether we are going to keep this data on-prem or at cloud. And if it is on cloud, like are we compiling, or like for the legal perspective, are we having all these compliances? And then security, because whenever we are having this distributed system, it is opening new channels for the hackers as well. So we need to ensure, like with the data at transit, data at rest is properly taken care of. And also, if any such process in place, which is whether it is a patch update process or whether it is an OS upgrade process, is intact, because most of these attack that happens today, they are due to the 0 days vulnerabilities, and we miss out some of these patches because we are not considering it so serious, and then we think, oh, this was not updated, it was already released, it was, this vulnerability is identified, now it is exploited, and now we are nowhere, and our data is compromised due to ransomware or something. So these processes should be in place, and that is something which is always good. We should always take it seriously, whether we are patching OS or any such component of our system. And fourth, which I would like to say, like organizational processes. Each and every individual who is part of your organization, he should understand the value of security for your solutions. If one such link is being compromised, it ends up compromising the entire system, and it can give a bad experience to the customers. So these are a few things we should adopt as a practice, best practices, at least from security perspective. I think rest of these things already covered by before. So my focus is mostly on security, being a security expert.
Sure. I mean, appreciate your inputs. Final comments from you, Ashish?
Sure. I think Vibhor and Amit have covered very important things, right? Security and customer obsession in terms of what really your customer wants. I think they're paramount. So, I mean, in addition to that, if I can add, I think I would categorize, assuming that you have decided to go on the journey and then you're actually trying to implement, the considerations that I would ask of is, think about three things, how are you achieving high availability, essentially in terms of resilience and high available architecture. When you're breaking down things into microservices, how are you going to achieve that? So try and align to that. Second is in terms of agility. So agility in terms of when you're breaking things into more microservices, I think it means that it gives more flexibility in terms of pushing new code, bringing new features to your systems, and and also it also improves from a productivity point of view, right? Ability for developers to actually test it very quickly in isolation without impacting the entire stack as such. So essentially, in addition to putting your customer at first and security, I also would want you to look at how are your processes and how are your methodology considering the agility, productivity, and then resilience and availability part of the point as well.
Sure. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining in. With this, we would like to bring this session to a close. Thank you very much, viewers.
Thank you, viewers. Thank you, Yash.